Grand Rising, everybody. Grand Rising. As you can see, I'm still alive. I'm still recovering, but I'm still alive. Okay, let's jump right into it. So what I want you to pay very close attention to is the timestamps. I need you to pay very close attention to the positioning of the winning combinations. I need you to pay very close attention to the very first number, the numbers on fire, and the triple dollar signs. Okay, so here we go. 9863 dropped on January the 20th. Ladies and gentlemen, on 116, I knew. So I told my VIP, look, if you want to even be considered a winner, you have to look at the fire. I promise the fire will manifest 116 to 124. And it's the only big money pattern on fire. I even left a hint of what you may see next. I even give you the dates that you will see it. You see it for yourself right there. Ladies and gentlemen, 703. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, on January 17th, I told my VIP, look, the prerequisite is in effect. To win, you must focus on top 5 3 digits. By the way, when you see me circle the state that it dropped in, it came from that state. So again, you can go to the search, which is the magnifying glass, type in the dollar sign, type in the state. It will reveal to you all the numbers that will drop in that state. Just that simple. But again, I guaranteed my number 4 big money pattern, 1, 2, 3, 4. Look, to win, you must focus on the top 5. You see, I did it with the top 4. And I told you, look, on 117, that's when you start to invest. I also guaranteed specifically the number 4 big money pattern would manifest straight. Do you see this? Ladies and gentlemen, 318. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, to win, you must focus on the top 5. I promise the first 2 big money patterns have the highest probability of winning, and they will manifest between the dates 113 and 120. So I met the deadline date on that prediction for Texas. Ladies and gentlemen, 9713. Ladies and gentlemen, the only motherfucking big money pattern on fire. You see it for yourself. I told you, look, the fire, the first number, and normally it's the first triple dollar sign, which would be your top 5, right? I told you to manifest in it. Look at this, 117 and 125. It drops on 120. You are a master manifester. But if you don't believe it, you can't receive it. Just like that, straight. Ladies and gentlemen, you better stop playing with me. I put the only motherfucking number that I knew would run straight on fire, and you're not listening. You don't hear me. You're not comprehending. You don't understand, understand, or overstand. A 5-year-old can pick out fire. Ladies and gentlemen, two, three. Ladies and gentlemen, I promised my VIP that, look, the very last motherfucking number you see, I'm going to put triple dollar signs on it, which means that I promise you see it for yourself, which I promise triple dollar signs 116 to 125. It drops on 120. Ladies and gentlemen, 616. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, I triple dollar sign the very last motherfucking number you see. I told you that I can make it manifest first. And I did that between the dates 119 and 127. Here I go showing off. Ladies and gentlemen, a black sheep will tell you that nobody is going to be investing, playing, or wagering on this combination. You see it for yourself, straight. I told you. Ladies and gentlemen, 556. Ladies and gentlemen, black sheep on time, straight. 556. I told you between the dates 116 and 125, hardly anybody will be looking at this number to win. And guess what? They will pull these numbers. Why? Because it is beneficial to the lottery commissioners when they can pull a number that hardly anyone is wagering on. That means that they don't pay out that much money. Y'all not listening to me though. Ladies and gentlemen, here I go showing off. I told you, the very last motherfucking number you see, I will make it manifest first. But y'all don't hear me. I told you, look, between the dates 115 and 124, you will see this happen. Ladies and gentlemen, 2735. Ladies and gentlemen, I promise my top two big money patterns would manifest between 115 881 straight. 881 straight. You got 1504. Ladies and gentlemen, the only big money pattern right there, top five. To win, focus on the top 4 digits. I promise the triple dollar signs will manifest 117 to 126 in Michigan. Ladies and gentlemen, 843. Ladies and gentlemen, I guaranteed 843 would manifest straight between the dates. Look, on 120, I said it would drop. You see it for yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, there's your 406. Ladies and gentlemen, I promise my number one motherfucking big money pattern would manifest straight. You see it for yourself. 118 to 126 in Florida. Ladies and gentlemen, 1416. Ladies and gentlemen, number one motherfucking big money pattern. I said you would see it between the dates 115 and 123 in Florida. Ladies and gentlemen, 084. Ladies and gentlemen, I promise my number one motherfucking big money pattern would manifest straight by the deadline date. That's accuracy right there. Ladies and gentlemen, 373. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, I got your triple dollar signs on 733. Promise the very last motherfucking number you see, I can make it manifest first. I did that. Ladies and gentlemen, here I go showing off. I promise the very last motherfucking number you see twice. Boom, boom, boom. You see it for yourself, that 080. Ladies and gentlemen, 9416. Ladies and gentlemen, I promise to manifest the top two big money patterns. 117 to 125. You see it for yourself in Georgia. Ladies and gentlemen, 4185. Number one motherfucking big money pattern. By the deadline date, I told you, I am this good at what I do. So when you see that I'm telling you, you can win with the number one motherfucking number, but you keep inboxing me, emailing me, you give us too many numbers. You're under a motherfucking spell. You're under the same spell that I put the lottery commissioners under. Stop fucking with me. Ladies and gentlemen, 5144, look at that right there. Guaranteed the top three. You see it right there for yourself. 115 to 124 drops on 120. Ladies and gentlemen, you see it for yourself. 231. Ladies and gentlemen, I triple dollar signed it. Told you it would go to Texas on 120. Y'all not hearing me. Ladies and gentlemen, 345. Ladies and gentlemen, 345. Guaranteed to manifest straight. Ladies and gentlemen, promised the top two big money patterns would roll out the next motherfucking day. You see it for yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, right there, straight, Texas, 394, 119 to 127, drops on 120. Just wanted you to see, ladies and gentlemen, I can do this with the Fantasy 5. Look, 457, 16, 17. 4, 7, 17. You see it right there for yourself. VIP members, I need you to pay very close attention to the promised top three combinations per state. These are the ones that will win. Next up are your promised combinations on fire. These are the combinations that will win. Ladies and gentlemen, 2702. Ladies and gentlemen, I guaranteed the black sheep on time to manifest. You see it right there. Between the dates 118 and 126. Ladies and gentlemen, 1514. Ladies and gentlemen, there it is. Black sheep on time to manifest. 117 to 126. Ladies and gentlemen, 273. Ladies and gentlemen, I promise my VIP that the top two will manifest. 116 to 125 in Texas, straight. Here I go showing off. 273, straight. Number one, motherfucking big money pattern. How can you miss? Due diligence is in order. You see it right now, 470, right there. Number one motherfucking big money pattern. I promise you will see these numbers manifest. There you go, 11 hours before the number even drops. I told you, look, I can see the future. I am from the future. I bring you the future back real time every single day. You got your 649. Ladies and gentlemen, I promise 649, triple dollar signed it as proof that you would see it in Ohio, 116 to 124. Ladies and gentlemen, 220. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, the black sheep on time to manifest, straight 220. Ladies and gentlemen, 4190. Ladies and gentlemen, I triple dollar signed it. Told you you would see it between the dates 118 and 126. Here I go showing off 11 hours at 2:23 a.m. I knew it was coming. So when I tell you that I can guarantee that I saw a number and you don't believe me, you don't receive it. It's flat out just like that. Ladies and gentlemen, 0801. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, I guarantee my top 4 big money patterns would manifest between the dates 116 and 125 in Florida. Ladies and gentlemen, 350, as you can see, that was from Florida, and it dropped in Florida. I told you, black sheeps don't lie. Straight. Here I go showing off. Told you. Triple dollar signed it. Due diligence 119 to 127. I made it manifest the very next day. Ladies and gentlemen, 767. Ladies and gentlemen, is the only number on fire. You see it right there between the dates 120 and 128. That's the same day promised to manifest. Ladies and gentlemen, 919. Ladies and gentlemen, I triple dollar signed it. Very last number you see would manifest first between the dates 117 and 125 in Tennessee. Ladies and gentlemen, 8922. Ladies and gentlemen, I guaranteed my top 3 big money patterns would manifest in Tennessee between the dates 118 and 127. So I see they want to keep messing with me today. They got me where they don't want me to go live. So I'm going to see everybody at the winner's table. Take a snapshot of that if you want to get in touch with me. There's the numbers. There's the email address. There is the website if you already know what to do. I will see everybody at the winner's table no matter what.